My name is Phyllis Silvers, and I'm going to read you a selection from an upcoming book about my late husband, Ed, who was a real pip. Okay. It's called Fella and the Studebaker. Between the two of them, Johnny Hogenkamp and Tommy Hofstetter, they did not have a truck or a car working well enough to make the trip to Metuchen, New Jersey. So they dropped in to talk to Ed Silvers, my late husband, who was well known as a horse owner, and somehow they convinced him to drive to the fall horse auction in his Studebaker. You remember Studebakers. They were that car that looked the same in the front and the back. Ed agreed to do all the driving, despite worrying that Johnny Hogenkamp's 350 pounds in the back seat might be pretty hard on his already low-to-the-ground car. Not only was Johnny more than slightly overweight, but he was going to the auction to get a horse for his brood of 8 barefoot kids with an absurdly low budget of $100. Tommy was the only experienced horse trader in the group, and this was a trip he made annually to buy 18 horses to fatten up and sell in the spring to summer camp owners. Though he wasn't in the market for another horse, Ed felt like a kid in a candy store as the three of them traipsed from horse to horse, just looking over their bodies, then stopping to open the mouths of a select few to look at their teeth, and for even fewer, lifting their hooves to see what state they were in. Johnny Hogenkamp soon realized these horses were beyond his meager budget. So he started out exploring on his own. The auction started, and soon Tommy had picked 18 healthy horses and had arranged for a trucker to bring them to his farm. Then Johnny showed up leading a thin, very undersized horse in a sorry state with watery eyes, showing evidence of having had diarrhea recently. When Tommy saw what Johnny's $100 had bought, he asked Johnny, "Wow, do you think you got your money's worth?" Sheepishly, Johnny replied that he and the missus would fix the little fella up over the winter for sure. Then Tommy said, "Well, that is all well and good, but you better forget about putting that scarecrow in the trailer with my big horses. They will either get sick from it, or bug the actual crap out of it, but most likely they'll just trample it to death before the truck even reaches the Garden State Parkway." Now Johnny was more determined than ever, so the three of them put their heads together and wound up going through the trash for cardboard boxes and empty feed bags to line the Studebaker's seat, floor, rear window, and sill. Then they pushed Johnny in and added another layer of cardboard and feed bags on top of him. Then they stuffed the little horse in on Johnny's lap, leaving the passenger side rear window open for the horse's head to stretch out like a giraffe. Before they left the parking lot, Ed checked to make sure his little Studebaker would be not dragging its bottom. And then they made their way to the Garden State Parkway. Going slower in the slow lane than anyone had ever, they were soon pulled over by a cop, who walked slowly around the car after pointing the beam of his very large flashlight into each window, and he then said, "Well, that's going to be some hell of a story." And then he let them go. They eventually made their way home, stopping first at the Hogenkamp cabin. The barefoot kids were thrilled to meet the new family member, but after the missus took one look at the young horse, she ran into the kitchen and put on a big pot of oatmeal for its welcome home feast. While Johnny and the kids made a place in their cellar where the little horse could stay warm all winter, Johnny declared that this horse from now on would be called Little Fella. Fella for short. Ed said that by spring the horse had filled out and was even a little fat and sassy, having lived in bliss in the bosom of his new family all winter. Fella was now happily giving rides to the entire brood except Johnny, who, despite all the best efforts of his missus to fatten up Fella, while assisting Johnny to lose a few pounds, still weighed much more than the horse.